In this video, I'm going to go over emulating Sega Game Gear and Sega Master System on the PS2 version of Retroarch. The Sega Game Gear and Master System are perfect systems to emulate within the PS2 version of Retroarch. They're very low spec, thus running well on the hardware. They're also really easy to get up and running after you get Retroarch installed, so if you need help getting Retroarch installed, be sure to visit part 1 of this tutorial series where I go over how to get it set up for PS2. But let's go ahead and dive in. Step 1 to getting Sega Master System and Game Gear games up and running on the PS2 version of Retroarch, we need to get our USB drive out of our PS2. Again, this is a continuation of a previous install guide, so refer back to that to get this USB stick set up. But once you have your USB stick out of the PS2, just put it into your computer and get it loaded up. The next thing you're going to need are Game Gear and Master System games. If you have a physical Game Gear collection, you can use a Retro 2 with Game Gear adapter to dump those really easily. I believe Master System works on that as well. Otherwise, there are other hardware dumpers for Master System. Alternatively, you could always resort to the shady parts of the net as well. I really don't care how you get games, but don't ask for download links as that is illegal, so just no, it's not happening. But once you have your games sourced, all we need to do is put them onto the USB drive for our PS2 version of Retroarch. In previous videos, I made a folder named Retroarch ROMs, and that's just where I'm putting all of my ROM files that I'm going to be using for the PS2 version of Retroarch. So, simple drag and drop procedure. Again, you don't have to put them into a folder named Retroarch ROMs, they can go literally anywhere on this USB drive. I just like having all of my stuff consolidated into nice folders. But once you have those files placed, we can go ahead and close out of the USB drive, pop it out of our computer, and put it back into our PS2 and get booted into Retroarch. Now, just as a quick reminder, this is again a continuation of my original PS2 Retroarch install video, so please refer back to that video for how to get Retroarch up and running on your PS2, as well as making a nice little Retroarch shortcut here for free MC boot, free HD boot. Anyways, now that we got that out of the way, let's go ahead and boot into Retroarch. And once Retroarch is booted up, we're free to begin loading up our Game Gear and Master System content. And one method to do this, we could go down to Load Content, scroll down to Mass, this is your USB storage device. Scroll to the directory you have your games stored. Again, I put mine in Retroarch ROMs, and then I had a Game Gear folder and a Master System folder. And then from here, you could press select on it, and it'll ask you to choose a core, and then it should load right up. I personally don't prefer this method. It's a little bit long, not as long as on other systems, but I still just prefer to make an actual playlist, and to do this you could go to Playlists, Import Content, Manual Scan, and then we're going to choose a content directory that our games are in, so I'm going to start with Game Gear, Retroarch ROMs, Game Gear games, scan this directory, and then for system name, make sure it's set to content directories, so make sure you have your games in a folder that you want them to be named after. And then for default core, we're going to scroll down to Sega, and we're going to be using SMS plus GX. Make sure scan recursively is on if you have your games separated into subcategories. And for the PS2 version of Retroarch, I recommend having your games unzipped. It just seems to make things run a little bit smoother overall, so I prefer that. But once you have everything set, go ahead and start the scan. And once that scan's completed, we can do the same for our Master System games. So content directory, change the directory over to Master System, scan this directory, system name, content directory, default core is going to stay on SMS plus, and then same things as before, scan recursively, and then start scan. And once that scan's complete and you have both of these playlists made, you can just back out, and you will now have an entry for Game Gear games and Master System games. And then to play a game, all we need to do is select the system, select the game, and tell it to run. And there we go, Sega Master System games up and running on the PS2 version of Retroarch. And for Master System emulation, it looks like it wants to run in widescreen, so if you are able to set that on your display, you can force it into widescreen, and it looks a little bit better than its 4x3 presentation. You can mess around with that on your display and see what you prefer, but I'm just going to leave it in 4x3 for now. But anyways, Master System games up and running in the PS2 version of Retroarch, and they run absolutely flawlessly. Not very many visual glitches that I could tell. And speed is just top notch, at least for Phantasy Star here. And Game Gear likewise runs just absolutely beautifully. And just a note on the aspect ratio for the Game Gear, it wants your display to be set to 16:9 for your PS2 output as well. Otherwise, it's kind of pillar boxed. But if you have your display set to 16:9 for PS2 output, it will actually look just about right. It's pretty great. So for those of you looking to get Sega Master System and Game Gear emulation up and running in the PS2 version of Retroarch, that's all there is to it. Just get some games, throw them on your PS2 USB drive, and load them up in Retroarch. But let's go ahead and cover some of the advanced core options available to us in SMS plus GX. Not a whole lot here, so it shouldn't take too long. By holding down the start button on your PS2 controller for 2 seconds, it should bring up your Retroarch quick menu. From here, scroll down to Options. And our first option is hardware, so by default this is set to auto, and this should work for 99.9% of use cases. If it doesn't, you can manually select a system here between Game Gear SMS compatibility, Coleco, Master System 2. The next option is region. Again, this should work for 99.9% of use cases, but if for whatever reason you need to manually set a region, you can do so here between NTSCU, NTSCJ, and PAL. The next option is going to be pretty interesting to anyone that plays Japanese Master System games because you can enable the FM synthesizer. It's on auto by default, which means that it'll be used, but you can also disable it if you don't want to use it. The next option is to remove borders, and this is basically to cut off some garbage overscan data in Master System games. So you can experiment with that, turn it on and off, see how you like it in different games. And then finally we have the Blarg NTSC filter. And I honestly can't recommend using this because it will begin to cause a number of interesting system issues, as you can now see here. Like, now we have no sound. I can't recommend using any of the Blarg filters on the PS2 version of Retroarch. And let's be honest, you're playing on a PS2, chances are you're playing on a CRT of some style, or you might be using a video scaler like I am, I don't know, but this version of Retroarch really is suited best for CRT use. But that's going to go ahead and cover it as far as the advanced core options are concerned for Master System and Game Gear. If there were some Master System games that you decided to use the remove border on, you can save them as a game option. That way you don't have to have this on for all Master System games, you can just do it on a game-by-game basis as you see fit. Or if you just prefer to leave everything off, you could save everything as a core override, so that way every time you load up a Game Gear or Master System game within this core, these are the options that are going to greet you. But that's going to do it as far as getting Game Gear and Master System games up and running on the PS2 version of Retroarch. Again, another very straightforward core, not a whole lot of options to mess with, and very plug and play, and it just runs great on the PS2 hardware. As always, if you happen to have any questions, feel free to ask me down in the comment section below, and I'll do my best to help you out on getting it set up. But now if you could all do me a huge favor, please be sure to hit that like or dislike button, just depending on how much you like today's tutorial, or any of the other videos on my channel for that matter. And if you haven't already, also hit that sub button so you can see when new videos like this, reviews, or other random nonsense go live. Goes a long way to helping us out, and we're super grateful to all of you for that. We're so close to hitting our goals. Thank you all so much. If you'd like to further help support the channel, you can also check out that join button here on YouTube or the Patreon link in the bottom right hand corner of the screen. A little really goes a long way to keeping the place running, and we couldn't be more grateful to all of you for that. Just, champions, thank you so much. You're all freaking rock stars, amazing, and we just, thank you. But that's gonna do it for this one, so until next time, my wonderful internet peeps, stay awesome, and we will see you all back next video.